Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the first Research Bites of 2023 for UCD's Institute for Food and Health. I'm delighted today that we have Dr. Simona Grasso, who is going to share with us her research undertakings. So Simona is an assistant professor at the School of Agriculture and Food Science at University College Dublin. Her BSc and MSc were both in food science, and they were from the University of Catania in Italy, and her PhD is from UCD. So Simona has worked in the food industry in a variety of roles, including in product development, as a food technologist, and as an auditor. She has led several European projects with both industry partners and academic partners. Her research is in the area of hybrid meat products and the valorization of byproducts, as well as exploring consumer attitudes toward these new foods. So thank you so much, Simona, and if you could start your presentation, that'd be great. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Dolores. I will just share in a second. Okay. So thanks, Dolores, for the intro. It's a pleasure to give a little talk about upcycled foods. So this will be just a very general introduction and case study, okay? So the first thing I want to do is to go over the structure of this talk. So why there is a need, first of all, for upcycled foods. I will provide some definitions. I will give some examples of upcycled foods in the world, especially in the US, in the UK, and in Ireland. And then I will go over the case study that I just published. I will finish with some challenges and opportunities, which could be some discussion points as well. And then there will be some time for questions and answers. So first of all, the need. As we all know, that big statistics from the FAO saying that 1/3 or more of the food that we produce in the world is either lost or wasted. So traditionally, we live in a linear economy in consumerism, so where we just take, we make, and we dispose. We're very linear. And obviously, this linear economy is not very sustainable. So there is an increasing interest in our daily lives, and obviously food is such an important part of our lives, to make this economy more circular. So that means rather than taking, making, and disposing, we want to make, we want to use, and then we want to recycle. So we want to make sure that things stay within the cycle for as long as possible. On the right-hand side, you can see that upside-down pyramid. And what that is called the food recovery hierarchy, which has been developed in the US, but there's different versions of the same thing. And basically, that tells you what we should be doing from the best choice to the worst choice in terms of recovering food. So the first and best thing to do is definitely to reduce the surplus food that we generate. The second thing to do is to feed people with it. And then we go down to then feeding animals or industrial uses, such as, for example, using food for fuel conversion or to recover energy. Then there is composting, and only at the end, we should think about landfill or incineration. So in this case, upcycled food stays up there at the top of the pyramid. So it's basically in the blue, feed people with it. So we'll go over the definition now. So according to academia, upcycled food are basically created using byproducts, which are safe for human consumption. So there shouldn't be any worry about safety. These byproducts are turned into something new. So just to give some examples, we could get a spent grain that comes from beer, and we can dry it and we can put it into a granola bar. Or, for example, we can get carrot peels. Rather than throwing them away, we can dry them and we can put them into a powder soup mix. In academia, you can also find other ways to refer to upcycled food, such as waste to value products. And there's also a broader definition that has been offered by the Upcycled Food Foundation, which is a foundation that has been funded only a couple of years ago in the US. And basically, they say that upcycled foods are use ingredients that otherwise would have not reached human consumption. Again, there is a stress on safety, so production through verifiable supply chains, and also they have a positive impact on the environment. However, this definition is much broader, so it includes also wonky produce such as fruit and vegetable. So obviously this could give rise to a little bit of consumer confusion. In terms of example, the US is basically the place where upcycled food started as a commercial idea. And it's also the place with, let's say, the most generous legislation. So there is basically, it is much easier to launch upcycled food. As you can see from top left, we have some drinks. So for example, the first one there uses upcycled whey. Then we have a vegetable broth concentrate, which is made from just rescued and upcycled vegetables. Then in the middle, you have there a product that is one of the first products actually that was launched, and is basically an extruded puff snack that is made by a blend of different cereals, including brewer-spent grains. And then we continue with the brewer-spent grains, where we have their barley milk. And then on the right-hand side, we have okara flour, which is basically the byproduct of soy milk, that it can be used again as a baking ingredient. Then bottom right, we have an example of a tea that is made from coffee fruit. Then we have cocoa fruit bites, so it's the valorization of the cocoa husk. Then there is pulp chips. So these chips are made from basically leftovers from the juicing industry, which could be vegetables or fruit. And then we have another baking mix there, which is from upcycled grains. So it's a big range, and obviously what this picture would look like today will look completely different, in a couple of months, and it would have looked different a couple of months ago, because there's always new products that come up and new products that are removed from the market. In the UK, obviously legislation is different, and therefore there's less products in the market. One of the most famous probably is Toast, which is a beer, and basically I think about a third of the barley, of the sugar that basically is needed for the fermentation of this sugar, is replaced with basically stale bread that comes from big sandwich manufacturers. Usually is the first slice of the bread and the last slice of the bread that it gets wasted. Then we have Rubies in the Rubble. They make these chutneys, tomatoes, again with rescued vegetables. Then we have Rejuice, which make apple juice with apples that are not, they have cosmetic issues that they cannot be used for supermarkets. And then on the right-hand side, there is a company I actually worked with, and they make this granola. What they do is they cover the granola with the pulp that is left over from apple juice and different juices from different fruits, and then they bake it. So they make this nice granola out of it. In Ireland, we have 3 examples that I know of. There might be more. There's Biasol. What they do is basically they dry brewer-spent grains. So the top 3 products there, they're basically the brewer-spent grain as it is, just in different sizes. While at the bottom you have 4 different mixes. So one is for pancake, soda bread, cookie, and scones. In the middle, you have Cream of the Crop. They do 2 different products. One is called Bananitas, and they're basically coins of bananas, which are either too big or too small for supermarkets. And what they do is they dry these coins and they cover them in chocolate. They also do ice cream, and that's made with either rescued cream or vegan alternatives. So, for example, oat milk or soy milk. Then there is Revolution Farm Kitchen, which is actually a UCD example. It's a slightly different example because it's not simply a byproduct that is reintroduced straight into new food. But it's still an example of circular economy, because what they do is basically they collect all the spent coffee grounds from the cafes in UCD, and they use that as a substrate to grow mushrooms. And then they collect these mushrooms, and periodically they go to a small development kitchen and they prepare this chili and this ragu, and then they sell the jars. So it's quite an interesting application. In terms of my work on upcycled food, I just started working on it when I was at University of Reading in the UK. I got in touch with this company, this US company called Planetarians. And what they had done is basically they had developed these flour from sunflower seeds. So usually sunflower seeds, if they're used for oil production, basically they result into the production of this cake that is usually just used for animal feeding. But this company has devised a patented method that basically allows to break down this cake into a food ingredient that is safe to use and that can be reincorporated into food safe products. So I took a sample and I used it in different foods. So I made biscuits with it, then I made muffins with it, and then I made frankfurters with it. So I tried to use it in different matrices to see the effect it will have. And then the last two publications there, they are on basically consumers, and we did some, it was in the period of COVID at that time, so we couldn't do any sensory, so we ended up with surveys on Qualtrics. After that, I applied for this Upcycled Food Foundation, and I received $1,000 to do a study of my choice. So I decided to. I thought it would have been interesting to compare different countries with different cultures regarding upcycled foods, understand the knowledge that people had, ask them for their definition and get their attitudes. So we did this co-creation survey to try to understand which ones were the preferred by products, the new upcycled foods, the combinations. And this has recently been published. It has been a bit of a multidisciplinary effort because I definitely wouldn't have all the skills needed that we covered in the study. So in terms of structure, this is what we did. So we had the same number of people in the US and in China. As I said, this was an online Qualtrics survey. We did some screening questions. Then we asked what was the knowledge of consumers in upcycled food. And we asked them for their definition, their likes, their dislike, willingness to try. Also the attractiveness and likelihood of purchase versus conventional. Then we did the co-creation part. So we gave them a series of byproducts, a series of new upcycled food, and we asked them to rank them and then to come up with the best combinations for each individual person. And then we did some scales and some final questions. So I will just go over the results for the underlined parts, okay? So in terms of knowledge was pretty low. If you just ask, have you ever heard of upcycled food? Only 20% in the US said yes, and 30% in China. But actually, when we went deeper into it and we asked them, what do you actually know about cycled food? So we asked them to give us the definition. And then we compared the definition versus the real upcycled food definition. Actually, only about half of those people were right. And so it shows that people maybe think they know a little bit more than they actually do. Then when we asked for that, to ask people to give us their definition, most of the definitions that were correct, they were about obviously reducing food waste and the environment. And this was pretty much high percentage in both countries, in both the US and China. While in China, we saw there was also another two different teams that we didn't really see in the US, and that was quality and health. So Chinese people felt that upcycled food could be of higher quality and also more nutritious, so they could be better for your health. In terms of liking, these were pretty positive in both countries. As you can see, the neutral smiley face there in the middle, more people were neutral in China than in the US, while in the US, more people liked the idea very much, which is the biggest smile in the smiley face. And then in terms of willingness to try, again, China was a bit more neutral, about 33% were more neutral. And then you have a definitely would try in the US, which is almost a third, so which is a good sign. In terms of the top buy products, as you can see in the US, spent grains were the preferred choice, and these were followed with the same percentage by cereals and vegetables that could be upcycled. While in China, again, cereal was the top choice, and then the second choice was different because it was fruit and dairy. So there is a strong interest in dairy products, and it's the only animal product actually that comes up. In terms of the top upcycled foods, so where do we put these ingredients? In the US and in China, it was breakfast food as first choice and snacks as second choice. And then the third choice was quite different. So it was pasta for the US and dairy food for China. Again, interest in dairy food in China is quite strong. And then finally, we asked people, okay, give us the top combination. What kind of new foods you would like to see? So in the US, it was plant grain in snacks and vegetable in soups at the same rate, and then fruits in snack. While in China, it was mainly fruit. The only difference was the application, so either in snacks or breakfast food or drinks. So you could see a very different summary there. So in summary, more participants had heard of upcycled food in China than in the US, but actually the real knowledge was quite low in both countries. The feelings were quite positive, definitely more positive in the US than in China. The top combinations, we went through them, they were quite different in the US and in China. And then from the definition, we could see that the Chinese participant had a completely different view on upcycled food, because they also saw them as quality products and as healthy products compared to the US counterpart. And I want to finish with just some challenges that come to my mind when I think about upcycled food and their future, which is mainly their sustainability. Are they actually more sustainable, or do we put in more effort than what it takes to just put them into landfill? So there is a need to use life cycle assessments. There is a need to measure sustainability. There are definitions, there are logos out there. What do they mean to consumers? It is important that we get consumer trust these logos and this definition. What do these concepts mean in different countries? As we have seen with this example, in the US, it means one thing, in China, it means something slightly different. What about nutrition? I think we should definitely push a little bit more on the nutritional angle, because a lot of these byproducts are very nutritious in terms of fiber, in terms of protein, antioxidants. So it's not just about sustainability. Another big issue is about supply chains. So these startups, sometimes they are fully dependent on a bigger company that gives them that particular byproduct. So that could be a seasonal, byproduct. So there is a need to make these supply chains more stable. Then there is legislation, as mentioned. The US is completely different from the EU, and in the EU, sometimes you can end up getting entangled in the novel food regulation, and therefore it could take you years before you can launch a product. And then finally, it's greenwashing. So how do we make sure that manufacturers do not use this concept for just self-promotion? So we need to make sure that if there is something on the label, that claim is backed up by real facts, so that consumers are not misled. So that's the end of my presentation. I think I took a couple of minutes more than I was supposed to. If you have any questions, just let me know. Thank you.